Live. Welcome in, everyone. Even though it's just that early time, nobody's here yet. Still, welcome when the time comes for you to be here. Do the sound check.
So welcome,
It's
welcome when the time comes.
okay. Come on, we hear you. It's working great. We love that. All right. So happy Thursday. Happy dying of thirst Thursday. Tired of running from the divine. Not me. Running toward the divine. That's what we're doing over here. So, welcome in, everyone. As you start to pull up, whenever you pull up, maybe it's years from now, maybe the year is 2030, and you're first, and you're now getting this sauce. Well, happy future from where I'm at now in this material realm. And there is the one true goddess. Welcome in. She says, the one and only Manly. Let's go. 100%. So, yep, today and this week was the week where I was saying that I want to try something different. Since I want to treat this like a classroom, since I want to, bring as much knowledge as I can and as much wisdom, but I also don't want to plop way too much on everyone. I know everybody else has other things that they're going to be spending their time engaging with. But I think if we divide the week up and do a class A, class B, we could look at it as universe A, universe B, like the old good old Kenneth Grant brought us, right? Oh, we love Kenneth Grant. We love Kenneth Grant with a big old grain of salt. Hopefully that's how you're all taking Kenneth Grant when you take a dose of Kenneth Grant is with a good grain of salt. Bobby Hemmett also was a fan of Universe A, Universe B. So you may have heard that from one of the other sources. Maybe you've never heard it at all before. So we can look at it like that. We've been in the Hindu universe of teachings, that karma yoga. We're now about to step back into the Christian lens, the biblical lens. And so um Manly P definitely has some wisdom to drop. And for the Bible, I think most people, well, maybe not actually, maybe not most people. I think some people at least understand that it is a initiated text. It means it was meant to be read through a certain set of lenses and having certain secrets communicated to you. Welcome into all of you just coming in. And so I think it would be wise to start this out with the caveat that, well, this would have been written in a different time. I think this was first written in the 50s. Let's take a look if it says. It's got the 2020 mark, but what about when it first was? Okay, it just says 2020 on this one, so that's when this one was published. But this was first written. I don't know. I would have to double check, but so obviously, as time goes on, as human beings go on, we learn and discover different things, right? And so this is going to be, at least for probably Manly P. Hall's very best understanding at the time he wrote it. So, this might not all stand up to the test of time. If any actual Bible scholars out there, I know there's some real popular content creators who are in that realm, want to even maybe pick this apart. Well, hey, first of all, go easy on me, because I'm gonna say right now, I'm not teaching that this is the 100% accurate way, but I think it would be wise for us all to at least read it and take it into consideration. I don't know what's all in here past the first little bit I already read, just to see how sick it was, and well, it was pretty sick. So though this is probably going to be interpreted through a more mystical lens, and so you got a lot of Bible readers out here who take it in a literal sense. You got a lot of Bible readers out here who look at the historical aspects and what the data can show and prove. But if we keep it in this more mystical realm where Manly's going to keep it for us right now, well, we might actually learn a thing or two. But I guess that doesn't mean that still that it's 100% accurate. So even this maybe take with a little grain of salt. You should probably take most things you come across with a big grain of salt. And let me get some music playing. And let me think about if there was anything else I wanted to get to say. Eh, that's good enough for now. Let's pull a tarot card. Let's pull a tarot card and we'll see. I mean, I did think of another good analogy for you guys because that whole critical thinking thing I want people to please be doing as they approach these. Well, it doesn't matter if it's these occult topics, these mystical topics. It doesn't matter if it's just whatever you're doing out here in the God's green earth. You should use a little bit of critical thinking skills about it, or at the very least just think twice about it. Some might say that's critical. I would say it's at least giving it a second thought, a second opinion. Like how many of you go out of your way to, I don't know, try to disprove whatever you're so firmly rooted in, whatever it may be? If you are a Christian, do you go and see what the hardcore atheists have to say? If you're a hardcore atheist, do you still try to keep in mind what the religious people have to say? If you're I don't know, I don't know. That's a good enough example for now. You know what I'm trying to say. And so I guess one other question I think it would be wise to ask yourselves is, before you just go taking anyone's word out here as gospel, is that is is this person trying to sell me something? Because think about it, we can go to the car realm again. Think about a car salesman. Do Are there really charming and funny and wonderful car salesmen out there that are still going to sell you a horrible car? Without a doubt. But does that not mean that doesn't mean there's not still honest and wonderful car salesmen out there that are going to really just say, hey, I know you have your heart set on this car, but this the only one I have in my lot is honestly a piece of trash. I don't even know why it's in the lot. I don't own the place, but I sell the cars here. You don't want this car. This other car over here has all the features, the things you want out of this car, whatever, all-wheel drive, nice stereo, I don't know. And it's also a lot better price, especially for the year, whatever. They're going to be real straight up with you. And so that's kind of one way, or the other analogy I thought of was that kind of working your way through the jungle of the occult is like a lot like somebody might buy a property on a jungle or a forest, right? And they might discover that there's a sinkhole on that property. Well, one person might go ahead and just put up a big fence and put a lot of danger, unstable land, private property type of signs, but also let you know why to not enter this property because you might die. Whereas another person will clear the room for a parking space and put up a little thing for paying to hike on this private land, and will even make the trail go purposely to the sinkhole. And then they'll come along like the knight in shining armor saying, hey, I'll pull you out of there, but also it's going to cost you because I got to go grab my fancy pants equipment and all of that. I mean, I guess one way or another you're keeping your life, but it's all about the cost, right? So there. That's my last little bit for you guys on trying to help you with some critical thinking as you're working your way through here. Because people do have very a lot. Most of these people do mean well. Most of these people do want to help, but a lot of them also want to. I don't know. They want to get paid for it. They want to make themselves feel like, I don't know, some type of way about it, and that doesn't mean that they might not still be helpful. In fact, they probably are helpful, but just some of the important things to be asking yourself. Okay, so now that I've given you that, now that I've done the 10-minute opening rant, let's shuffle up the deck. Let's see what we've got. And Grace and Growth, welcome in. Says, hi, we learning about God right now. Well, yeah, definitely. That's what we do over here on this channel. We learn about God. We learn about, today we're going to be learning specifically about the Bible, whereas other times we learn about Jesus himself. Sometimes we learn about things like yoga. Sometimes we learn about things like magic. So we learn about all different types of ways that God can pop up for us in this life. And how is God going to pop up for us right now in this tarot shuffle, in this tarot pull? I don't know. That card wants attention. Let's just go with that one. It's a cups. It feels like water to me. It's the fool again. Oh, man. It's the fool again. He really wants attention. He really says to us right now, what is he saying today? What is he saying? What is he really saying today? He's saying, let's pull another card. Let's actually pull another card instead of do a jump. So I can really see what this fool is trying to tell us. Well, we are starting a new book. So a second book, a second class. So in that sense, we're a fool all over again. We're at the start of another journey. And this one, sword. I touch it and I see a sword in my head. It's a wands. Well, they are in the shape of daggers. So I guess kind of, but no, it's wands. It's the 10 of wands. So Saturn in Sagittarius. Saturn's at home in Sagittarius, right? No, Sagittarius is ruled by Saturn. No, it's not. No, it's not. Jupiter. That's Jupiter. I'm thinking of Aquarius. Aquarius and Cap, they got that Saturn thing going on. So, and then in the world of Malkuth. So on the one hand, this could be looked at like you got a lot of irons in the fire, and that's why there's this oppression here. On the other hand, it could be looked at as all of those irons are coming to their stage of completion in the material realm, since Malkuth 10, the sphere on the tree of life, that this card would go along with in the highest world, the archetypal world of fire of wands. So perhaps you have gathered all of the aspects of your will together, and you're about ready to let them drop down into the next stage of manifestation, the next stage of creation. Or perhaps you've just got too much going on. And maybe that's what we'll find as we go about trying to do these two books in one. Maybe we got too much going on. But I can't know that if people don't speak up one way or another. So feel free at any time to say, hey, let's just focus on one. Hey, I love that we're doing two different things. Hey, whatever. But we gotta at least try to jump in the water and swim around a little before we'll know for sure. So that's our fool's journey right now, is that there's all this will. It's all coming into the material aspect of the world of will, for the the final stage on the tree. Saturn. Saturn too. And Sagittarius, the focus, the aim of Sagittarius, it's the arrow on it, it's the archer. And even though Saturn can be restriction, Saturn also can be growth. So I'm saying right now, we're on a fool's journey. There's a lot of irons in the fire, but time will tell if it's we got too much going on, or if we're actually hitting that stage of completion. Once your goddess says opening the door. Yeah, we are. We're opening the door into this new study right now. And that's what we love. Okay. So there. That does that for that. And without any more to yap, any more to say, let's do it. Let's try to understand our Bible from the wise and powerful Manly P. Hall. Yet another dragon who incarnated as a human for a little while. Because all that man did was spit fire. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what that 10 of wands is all the flames, all the flames. Each and every tree on the tree of life is about to be just fire spit upon us by the wise and powerful Manly P. Hall. So today we'll probably knock out this section 1, which has about 5 parts to it. And so let's get into it. Let's get cracking. And thank those of you who are here to join me for being here. All right, Class B, Bible class. So, section 1, the first part is called The Sources of Sacred Writings. In spite of human prejudice to the contrary, there is but one religion and one truth, and all the great faiths of the world are parts or fragments of the ancient wisdom. The scriptures of the world are the written records devised both to preserve and at the same time to conceal the secrets of the 49 branches of the eternal law. It naturally follows that there is a certain interdependence between religious writings. To understand any one sacred book completely, it is necessary to also understand all other sacred books. Well, I think that line right there is a highlightable one. Oh, yeah, I took my highlighter in the other room. Well, let's see how well this one works. Not bad. It has been difficult for human beings to accept this truth, and for lack of interreligious understanding, there has been very little religious understanding. Each man clinging to his own book, hugging to his heart his own fragment of the law, has believed that there is a peculiar virtue in proclaiming a part and denying the rest. Bibles, so called, are collections of inspired writings and the record of ancient oral traditions. They are accumulated over immense periods of time and can usually be traced to the lore of preceding civilizations. And yeah, that's what some of these Bible scholars will say. They'll say that even though this is being passed off as the word of Christ, that these were Christ's words, some of these were actually written like decades or maybe even centuries after Christ was even on the planet. So let's see. Built up from earlier fragments, they should never be regarded as revelations in the sense of being delivered in toto to any individual by some divine being. The revelation factor is generally limited to interpretation. Some illumined individual contemplating sacred matters perceives some deeply concealed value, and by placing special emphasis upon this new aspect, comes to be regarded as a religious founder. Among ancient peoples, sacred writings were reserved for the contemplation of initiated priests and were not available to the laity. The priests interpreted such parts of the scriptures as applied to the problems of the occasion. The populace gathered before the temple received their spiritual instruction from initiates of the priestly orders who stood upon the porch of the holy house and solemnly expounded the laws. These priests were equipped with the keys to the scriptural allegories by which they were enabled to unlock the profounder parts of the spiritual tradition. After the decline of the mysteries, when the sacred books fell into the hands of the profane, the subtler values were lost. And see, that's why what rambling I have been doing out here is because it's such a mixed bag of that in the occult world, where some of these people really are wonderful and have wonderful things to say and to teach, and sometimes there is a paywall involved, but hey, if you're getting your money's worth, then that's a whole different thing. But then there's also a lot of this exact thing happening where people will watch a handful of reels and now think that they really understand something, and then they'll go turning their camera on, and then it's just this game of telephone where little and more by more things become degraded, things become profaned, and so just critical thinking is important. Iron sharpens iron, all of that type of stuff. So the how do I want to say, the those who will rise up, and then I guess the others, well, at some point or another they'll get it too. Might not be this lifetime, but hey, at some point or another. In the meantime, we'll pray for them. We was praying for you. Okie doke. So let's see. The Vedas, the sacred books of the ancient Aryan Hindus, appear to be the oldest of scriptural writings and the source of most of the sacred books now venerated throughout the world. The religious traditions of the ancient Hindus are of incredible antiquity. The traditions of these people indicate that the laws and the institutes of the gods were revealed to the progenitors of the Aryans in the highlands of the Himalaya mountain country nearly a million years ago. The migration of the Aryan tribes, first southward and then westward, resulted in the establishment of several subraces and cultures. The migrating tribes carried with them the sacred traditions of their ancient gods. With the development of writing, the records passed from the memories of priests and scribes to the more permanent and impersonal media of stone, clay, and papyrus. From the Vedas poured forth the streams of religious tradition which, flowing into various nations down through the ages, appear in the course of time as the single source of the numerous scriptural writings of the world. Great saints and sages interpreting this ageless wisdom wrote their commentaries or restated in the terms of their own day the Vedic lore and the sacred tradition. In China, Lao Tzu and Confucius were the interpreters, and their writings have become scripture. In India, Buddha was the great emissary. In Persia, it was Zoroaster. In Egypt, Akhenaten and Hermes. In Greece, Orpheus, Pythagoras, and Plato. In Syria, it was Moses and later Jesus. According to the teachings of the old initiates, the spiritual tradition was likened to a flame burning forever upon the altars of the gods. The flame was divided into seven flames, and these in turn were again divided into seven, the result being 49 fires or the 49 spiritual revelations, called in the Kabbalah of Moses the 49 gates of the law. Thus, out of the one eternal truth came forth the seven world religions, each in turn divided into seven lesser parts, altogether constituting the divine wisdom. The Christian Bible is the principal sacred book of the Western world. It is usually divided into two parts, and occasionally into three parts by the insertion between the Old and New Testament of the Apocrypha, or doubtful books. The Old Testament sets forth the secret doctrine in Israel. It is a Kabbalistic book, almost unintelligible without the assistance of certain commentaries. The New Testament derives its teachings from the Essene mystics of Syria, the Mithraic cultists of Persia, the Seraphic rites of the Egyptians, and the Simonian Gnosis, also of Syria, and the Neoplatonism of Alexandria. The unknown authors of the Gospels were, of course, men learned in the comparative religious systems of their day. It is futile at this time to engage in speculation or controversy as to the identity of these writers. It is sufficient to say that they possessed a working knowledge of the secret doctrine and purposefully contrived to conceal this knowledge in what is made to appear an historical narrative of the life and works of an individual. Like the Christian revelation, the Old Testament in the Mosaic tradition sets forth under the guise of history an elaborate metaphysical system derived directly from the older Egyptian lore, indirectly from Chaldea, or Chaldea, I think people say it both ways, Phoenicia, and India. Moses was an initiate of the secret schools of Egypt, and the Pentateuch, usually ascribed to Moses, is the surviving remnant of the most profound teachings. It is quite unlikely that the Pentateuch has descended to the present time in anything resembling its original form. There is considerable evidence that the true books of Moses were lost in the night of time. But whatever the case, it is certain that the ancient wisdom, although somewhat distorted in form, still survives in the Old Testament writings. And two, that it can be extracted therefrom with the aid of certain keys and patient illuminated research. A reasonable interpretation of the biblical writings is one based upon a system of cross-reference in which all the great schools of ancient religion and philosophy are considered as one composite structure. Thus, each system is interpreted in the light of the others. As each religion has been built up from innumerable older beliefs, the understanding of these various background beliefs is absolutely essential. The gaps in one system where the tradition has been mutilated or lost can be filled in from other systems of similar tradition. If the work is painstakingly done, the result is a complete picture by which the student is able to comprehend the correct meaning of obscure passages and fill in perplexing vacancies. The important thing is to be sure that the building in is done from the same stream of tradition as the religion that is being reconstructed. All right. So the second part of this first section is called Biblical Theory of Creation. Get a drink and then go ahead and get it. The cosmology the cosmogony of the Jews is derived directly from the Chaldean and Egyptian. This has been proved beyond any question of doubt by the discovery of cuneiform tablets much older than the Jewish Bible, which contain many of the stories set forth in the opening chapters of Genesis. It is quite possible that the Old Testament originally contained a much more amplified account of the creation, but certainly it is still possible to make much more of the book of Genesis than the average churchman has accomplished. With the aid of the Jewish and Kabbalistic commentaries, Genesis is amplified into a rational account of the beginning of the universe, far more vital, significant, and impressive than the accepted theological version. A great scholar observed in the last century that Christian theology, and of course he included Jewish cosmogony, was the only system believed by the more advanced races of the earth to insist that God made the universe out of nothing. The gods. The book of Genesis opens with a simple and dramatic statement which has been angelicized into the most impressive sentence in English literature. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. This verse seemingly presents no problem, but the more a searching student thinks about it, the more fully he will realize that into 10 worlds has been compressed a cosmic process involving hundreds of millions of years of time and innumerable complicated mysteries. Only an elaborate commentary can make this verse partly intelligible to the human mind entirely ignorant of divine and cosmic procedures. We must first define the word God as it is used in this case and throughout the first chapter of the Bible. The word in Hebrew is not God or Jah or Jehovah, but Elohim. God is a reverent but entirely insufficient word to convey the true meaning of Elohim. Most important to be considered are two facts. First, in Hebrew, Elohim is an androgynous term inferring a combination of male and female attributes. Second, the word by its termination is plural. Actually, therefore, the word Elohim means the male female creators, representing a host or at least a group of powers and not under any condition a single personal entity. The words heaven and earth are also misleading through inadequate translation. By heaven and earth should be understood a superior and inferior condition, a separation of qualities, not a division of place. All right, now we're getting into some cosmic doctrine type. The average reader will think of heaven as the firmament and the earth as the planet. And this interpretation will destroy entirely the significance of the birth. It would be better to interpret heaven and earth as spirit and matter, or the subtle and the gross, in the sense of vibration or qualities of life and vitality. All right, need to bust out that highlighter again. So there you go. Shiva and Shakti in the Christian terminology, at least according to Manly P. Okay. The words in the beginning also present difficulties. The wise student will interpret them as from that which is first, or in eternal principles, or that which was in the beginning. This leaves only the word created. And here again, misunderstanding is almost inevitable. The human mind customarily conceives creation as the making of something that is new. But if we think about it, we will realize that in creating any physical thing, creation is only a new pattern made up of already existing factors. Thus, if a man creates a picture, he requires the aid of paints and brushes and canvas. The creation is the inward inspiration which applies these instruments for the release of an idea. Creation in this verse thus implies formation or manifestation, the arranging of ever existing elements into new patterns to be the vehicles of purpose. Nice. Creation, inward inspiration, which applies these instruments for the release of an idea. And this one too is the last line. Okay. Oh yeah, this highlighter is drying out. That's alright. No biggie. I thought so, but it was working for a sec. Sometimes they'll do that. With these thoughts in mind, let us read again the verse according to a fuller understanding of its meaning. From the eternal principles and essences, the androgynous creator gods manifested forth the positive and negative aspects of being. Having thus clarified interpretation, we can bring to bear upon it such commentary matter from ancient Jewish beliefs as will reveal the full significance of the verse. The Jewish mystics recognized an eternal, definitionless principle, which they denominated Ein Sof, the boundless. From the Egyptians, they derived the teaching that this boundless one possessed three intrinsic aspects or attributes: being, life, and light. These three as one, and that one formless, ageless, and changeless was the true God, whose most perfect symbol was space, the source and ultimate of all things. And Darren Fitzpatrick, 439. Hello to you. Welcome in. I hope you're having a good day. And okay. Periodically, according to great cycles, space caused to emerge from its own nature primordial unity, the objectification of being, life, and light. This first manifestation was called the opened eye and was designated by the Kabbalists Kether, the crown of the eternal glory. Ein Sof, the absolute, was life in suspension. Kether, the firstborn of the absolute, was life in expression. Sick. And Zero, what's up? Says peace, J Baldell, and everybody here. Much love and blessings. Much love and blessings to you, Zero. And thanks again for that book recommendation. That was pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot. I'd say about the only thing I was a little, I was just the way she defined karma, and she said that karma was Sanskrit for comeback, and that's just not what it's Sanskrit for. I don't think I've ever read one actual Sanskrit text about karma that says that that's what it means. Usually they say that it has to do with actions or the results of actions, which I mean, sure, you could kind of interpret as comeback, but Hey, if that's my only knock on an otherwise really good book, then that's really not too bad at all. So thank you again. It was a very enjoyable book. I appreciate you and all you do in this life. You're wonderful. And Darren Fitzpatrick says, I'm having a great day. Well, that's wonderful news. I'm glad to hear it, and I'm glad that you are here. Okay, so within the nature of Kether was manifested polarity, which is the foundation of activity. The polarities were called Abba, Father, and Alma, Mother. Abba was the positive manifestation of spirit as force, energy, and power. Alma was the negative manifestation of spirit as matter, substance, and receptivity. From the union of Abba and Alma, energy and substance, was produced form. According to the Kabbalists, the Elohim, or the creator gods, were the progeny of the union of life and matter. It was the Elohim, in turn, moving in space, who brought forth the mundane universe over which they ruled. By mundane is meant not the physical worlds, but the metaphysical system, of which the physical creation is the lowest or seventh part. The first manifestation or agitation was equivalent to the conception of the universe in all its parts, like the planting of a seed from which was to grow the worlds. It is the first motion in the absolute. Nice. So far, I'm liking the way he's breaking this down. And Zero says, glad you enjoy. Yes, sometimes they lack a more deeper understanding of Eastern terms. Happy that you liked. Yeah, well, that's why I say, like, as she goes, because she kind of started out, I think it was the fifth chapter where she was talking about the law of karma. And so she kind of opened it up by saying karma is Sanskrit for come back. I'm pretty sure that's how she worded it. Because then she went on to say, like a boomerang, but then based on how she broke it down though more, it was like she still had the understanding of it, but really it's not that big of a deal, you know what I mean? I guess just in the way that I feel that, there are words that do translate and mean something, and then so if somebody decides to put their own definition on it on like a foreign word or something like that, I don't know. To me, it just seems I don't understand why you would do that. But ultimately, her breakdown of it showed that she still had a pretty good understanding of the law of karma. So thank you very much. And Darren Fitzpatrick says, I love Jesus Christ so much, and I wish you a very good life. God bless you. Sick. Well, all right then. Good. You came to the right place. And I wish you a very good life as well. God bless you. Okay. The comparison in other religious systems checks and justifies the speculation of the Jewish mystics. In the northern Tibetan systems, the meditations of Adi Buddha, universal consciousness, produced the seven Dhyani Buddhas, or the seven modes of consciousness by which the world is formed. In the teachings of the Persians, the supreme nature, Ahura Mazda, manifested the Amesha Spentas, who become the formators of the lower worlds. In the Egyptian Hermetic teachings, the Elohim are the governors, the cosmocratores. In the ancient Egyptian system, they were the Ammonian artificers, the servants of Ptah, who fashions the egg of the universe upon a potter's wheel. The Elohim are also the seven Chabiri of Samothrace, the seven rays upon the golden crown of the Gnostic lion. I don't know if that's supposed to make a cho or if it's Kabiri, but either way. The sacred seven, the unwritten vows which together make up the name of the manifested divinity, the seven colors of the spectrum, the 7 days of creation, the seven seals of revelation, the eternally recurring septenary, by which art, music, and physics are bound together, are the Elohim, the seven breaths that move upon the deep. Okay then. Okay then, Manly. The formation of the worlds. The second verse of Genesis states, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Interpreted according to the mystical tradition, this would read, and the below, the passive aspect of being, was formless and devoid of manifested life, and darkness or oblivion filled the whole expanse. The spirits of Elohim moved, impregnated, and enlivened the essences of the negative principle. Nice. In some of the Hindu works, this motion of the Elohim is referred to as the curdling of space into the worlds. Yeah, okay, curdling like how milk will curdle, because also they'll talk about how Vishnu rests on the ocean of milk. I think one of his names translates into something about who rests on the ocean of milk. I can't remember exactly though, so you might want to look that one up on your own. The seven modes of intelligence, which are the personification of the seven laws of nature, which are in turn the seven wills of the spirit, began to manifest patterns. They were first in the nature of vortices, called in the Sefer Yetzirah the whirlwinds. One form of this theogonic myth declares that the universe was created by the deity speaking the sacred word. Of course, the word was made up of the seven vowels of the Elohim, which together are the fiat, which issues as a host of living powers from the lips of the Creator. In the North Asiatic tradition, the seven sons of the Eternal established their foundations in the deep. Seated in the six directions of space, six of the builders turn upon the seventh, who is placed in the center and is called the immovable. In the Kabbalah, the center is called the Holy Temple, the Sabbath of eternal rest, around which moves the 6 days of creation. Actually, that reminds me of one other thing I wanted to say was that so it's one thing to intellectually grasp all this stuff, right? But they talk about theory and practice, you know what I mean? And so it's one thing to read or hear somebody talk about like how the pentagram or hexagram rituals are done, and even to talk about what they learned from doing them for so much amount of time. But it's another thing to actually do it yourself and actually experience putting yourself in the center of creation, so to speak, and doing these different things, and especially doing them for months or years, and the more and more you do it, the more you learn from it, the more you gain from it, the more you start to really understand the purpose of what maybe at first you just didn't really understand at all. And so that I wanted to add that little bit with my little bit of ranting for the day. In the Kabbalah, the higher powers do not descend into the lower elements to ensole the mundane diffusion, but rather cast their shadows upon the deep or the lower elements. In the teachings of Lamaism, we have a somewhat similar statement. The meditating Dhyani Buddhas dream themselves into the illusion of matter, causing a certain part of their own consciousness to assume the illusion of existence, though ever meditating above it. The shadows of the Elohim descending into the depths of matter result in the formation of the four levels or planes of illusion, which the old Jewish philosophers called worlds. These planes correspond roughly to the levels of spirit, mind, soul, and body. Amen. In each of the four worlds, the seven Elohim are reflected. So maybe that even is a little bit of why we pulled that 10 of wands, is I guess if we're thinking of it in the highest level of spirit, but also in the sphere of Malkuth, and again where we're trying to project that highest aspect of spirit into what would be considered like the sphere of body or the sphere of manifestation. So that's why I really like doing these polls along with these book studies, is because it gives you new interpretations. And so that's how you can see that even though you might have whatever book came along with your tarot to tell you, oh, this card means this card means that, the more you actually do it and study it and figure out about correspondence and things like that, the more opens up to this reading. And so then as you do readings for yourself, as you do readings for others, you might have a whole different interpretation based on your understanding, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. So you might have somebody out here who says, "Oh no, that doesn't mean that. That means this," but they don't understand that you've been putting in some serious miles, and that you, even though this can mean the traditional thing, it also kind of has this whole different meaning, and especially depending on how it comes up in a reading, what other cards it comes up with. So similar to what the Fool represents too, Kether going to Hawkmaw, which could also be kind of looked at as the triple blackness coming into Kether, because to me those kind of have a correspondence in there, in the way like Dion Fortune said. It's like the foot stepping down. It's that point of like the mid-flight, basically, where the action of the step has been taken, but the foot hasn't quite hit the ground yet. And that's what they're saying here too, with these Buddhas who are above creation, meditating it into manifestation. Okay, so we were right here. In each of the four worlds, the seven Elohim are reflected to become in all 28, which caused them to be associated in symbolism with the lunar month and its 4 weeks of 7 days. The ancient Jewish oh, that's weird because we're in like a perfect Saturday through Sunday February right now where we have exactly that. That's cool. The ancient Jewish priests had a peculiar veneration for the moons, their faith being a lunar cult. Only the lowest of the four worlds was involved in the physical creation. This lower or fourth world was made up, and see how he has that in parentheses, because again, these aren't actual things, these are representations of things. These are symbolic interpretations. This lower or fourth world was made up of seven parts or planes, the shadows of the seven Elohim. Of the seven planes which make up the mundane sphere, six are superphysical, and one, the lowest, is physical. The six superphysical planes are called causal and are the source of the energies and patterns which manifest or flow into and through the seven. The seventh and lowest diffusion of the fourth world is that with which the creation story in Genesis is concerned. The unfoldment of this physical plane is according to the pattern commonly known as the Chaldean system of cosmogony. In the cosmogony of the Greeks, the material universe is brought into being by seven gods, each of whom rules over one of the seven parts of the mundane diffusion. In the Greek system, the gods are Phanes, Uranus, Kronos, Rhea, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. The mundane world consists of seven interpenetrating spheres, of which six are superphysical and the lowest or seventh is physical. According to this system, the seventh or physical plane is ruled over by Hades, the subterranean god, to symbolize the physical plane as being the farthest removed from the divine energy. Okay, then. And so now we'll be on to the 7 days of creation. The description given in Genesis 1, verses 1 to 31, must be understood to represent the gradual development of the physical universe. The Elohim, the gods of the dawn, mold the negative substances of being into the form and pattern of the solar system. Having brought the planets, including the luminaries, into objective existence, the Elohim then take up their thrones in the planetary bodies and, according to the Chaldean Genesis, circle about in their orbits age after age, governing with their celestial splendors the creatures of the lower world. The pattern for the creation of our own solar system applies to all other solar systems in our universal chain. The pattern also applies to all forms of life evolving within the solar systems, from suns and planets to grains of sand, electrons, and atoms. This is the Kabbalistic teaching concerning the macrocosm and the microcosm, or the greater and the lesser creations, each patterned according to the other. This led the Kabbalists to say, comparing man, a microcosm, with the universe, a macrocosm. Did I say I think I read that right. Comparing man, a microcosm, with the universe, a macrocosm, that man is a little universe and the universe is the grand man. This did not mean that the universe actually resembled man in his physical form, but rather that the same system of geometry which patterned man also patterned the world, and that the same essences, principles, and forces were in both. The Elohim say, "Let us make man in our own image," etc. That is, let the lesser creation be patterned after the greater creation and be similar to it in principle. Medieval theologians insisted that the 7 creative periods called days made up together a week similar in time to a week of mortal calculation. This the wisest of the ancient philosophers always denied, insisting that the term day in Genesis referred to an age, cycle, or great period of time. Science uses such terms as period or age to signify one of the major divisions in the evolution of the earth and the life evolving upon it. Thus, such terms as the Miocene or Pliocene age or the glacial period. Modern science is of the opinion that the physical Earth has existed for from 500 to 1,000 million years. A recent discovery of fossil remains indicates animal life upon the Earth at least 175 million years ago. When these figures are compared with the theological opinion that the Earth was created by the arbitrary will of God in the 5th millennium BC, it is apparent that science and theology come to a parting of the ways. The biblical scholar does not harbor the delusions, however, which afflict the pious and fanatical theologians who cling desperately to the jot and tittle of the revised version. There is abundant confirming evidence to indicate that the Genesis given in the Bible describes processes occurring over a period of at least a billion years, and that it describes how the creative forces of nature brought forth sequentially the superphysical bodies of the solar system, then the material planets, and then, shifting perspective to the planet Earth, unfolded the life upon it up to its present state. The descent of the Elohim with their hosts of spirits into the swirling mists of the primordial substance, and their molding of these mists into the sidereal patterns and bodies, constituted the involutionary process or the descent of spirit into matter. The unfolding of the worlds through the manifestation of ever improving types of life, or the release of consciousness through a concatenation of improving vehicles, constitutes what Darwin called evolution. I'm gonna look up. I don't know concatenation, so I better look that up. Concatenation. A series of interconnected things or events. Okay. Okay then. So the unfolding of the world through the manifestation of ever improving types of life, or the release of consciousness through a series of connected events of improving vehicles constitutes what Darwin called evolution. Okay. There is no real argument between science and religion. The difficulty is principally due to the extremely compressed description of the creative processes given in Genesis. If the reader can take such a statement as, "and God created," and read instead, "and the forces of nature over a great period caused to manifest," most of the difficulties will be overcome. There we go. That right there is a bar for sure. If the reader can take such a statement as, "and God created," and read instead, "and the forces of nature over a great period caused to manifest," most of the difficulties will be overcome. It should be clearly realized that the ancients understood by their gods creative hierarchies, not personal beings performing sorcery in space, but rather aspects of creative intelligence gradually unfolding through their own creations. In the Egyptian rites, it is said the gods impregnated space with themselves, and then the seeds of the divine nature sprouted and grew up to form the universe. The proper attitude is to realize that divinity is evolving in and through the universal formation. Evolution is really eternal life ideating or shining through material organisms, as a light might shine through a lamp. Evolution is also, therefore, inward life building ever more perfect forms through which to express its own potentialities. The book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 24 to 26, inclusive, reveals that the ancients were fully aware of man's relationship to the animal world. In the sixth day, both the animal and the human kingdom is formed, the animal manifesting first and finally man, created in the image or likeness of the Elohim. The first part of verse 26 requires special emphasis. And God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness." Then in the last part of the 27th verse, it says, "Male and female created he them." This is a very confused picture according to the King James Version, that the word God is intended to be plural or is to be plural is evident in the statement, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Here, of course, God should be read Elohim, the creator. By the word said in each case is to be inferred not to speak, but to will, or to inwardly determine the same thought that is implied in the Tibetan creation when the worlds are formed by the meditation or the inward mental determination of the dhyanas. And like I said, how I said, oh, well, it's kind of swords because it's daggers. Crowley specifically had Lady Frida Harris paint those two the two wands that were up and down like Tibetan daggers. So not just any dagger, but Tibetan. I think they're called dorjes or dorhes. I'm not so sure how you pronounce it. If the J sounds like a J or a G or a H, but Dorges. So a Tibetan type of dagger. He had her paint that along with the other ones there. So even more, that's kind of opening up that much more right there, especially not to speak but to will. So that's all those aspects of will. So all these goddesses who said we should make them in our image. Well, that gives us a new way to look at that, huh? And the oppression we feel from that will, from that spirit being brought down in to the physical, having to come do the dang thing. In the Gnostic writings, it is described that the builders each gave to man a certain part of their own nature, so that when he was finally completed, he participated in all of the universal powers and, in addition, possessed the life of the eternal Father, Ein Sof, the Boundless. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is the last one for this first section, the pre-Adamic man, or Adamic man, however it's I think that most people say Adamic, pre-Adamic man. The condensation of the Earth from its nebulous fire mist state required many millions of years. In those ages, there was no time with which to measure the infinite process. Time is man made. At last, the body of our planet was formed with the surface of the Earth in a molten state and vapor surrounding the whole planet. The Earth was not habitable by any creatures that man has recollection of. Although it is taught in old records that fantastic beings drifted about in the flames. The physical globe floated in a sea of superphysical humidity, termed by the Greeks aether. This gives us the origin of the primitive belief that the continents of the earth floated in a great sea. This aether was not physical humid vapors arising from the Earth's surface, but the vital ethereal element in which were evolving the forms that were later to descend upon the Earth as species and races of living things. Most of the ancient philosophies teach that life descended onto the physical planet from some sphere of superphysical energy, which encloses the physical planet. Curiously enough, this old opinion survives, and recent stratosphere explorations have discovered living spores in the stratosphere. A number of scientists have come to the conclusion that space may contain these spores, which, like drops of condensing water, represent seed lives oozed out of the etheric body of the Earth. Huh. It is too soon to say what will be the final opinions of scientists upon this matter, but it is also entirely too soon to declare the ancient philosophers to be wrong. Okay, so like I said at the beginning, for what this is what would have been cooking for when Manly P. Hall wrote this book, and I honestly can't say that I know what that has developed into in this modern day and age. But now I know I'm gonna go look up about it. Bohm, the German mystic, describes the celestial Adam who dwelt not upon the earth but in the heavens, a term which may infer this etheric diffusion. Certainly, the ancients believed that even the process of incarnation infers the descent of the superphysical principles of man from a humid sphere outside of the earth. This humidity is described by the old mythologists as a river which divides the earth from the outer universe. To the pagans, this river was the Styx. Man, I was just thinking like the river Styx. Oh, sick. And to the Christians, it is the Jordan. Nice, with its hosts of the redeemed gathered upon the distant shore. The Greek poets wrote of the herds of souls floating in the mist which divides the world of the living from the world of the dead. By the world of the living is simply meant the physical plane, and by the world of the dead, the superphysical, subjective universe, although in fact the opposite would be more nearly true. In the biblical story, man dwelt in a paradisical sphere before his fall into the mystery of generation. This paradisical sphere is called a garden and has been variously located by religious enthusiasts upon almost every part of the Earth's surface. And nowadays, even in the Earth, I see people talking about the hollow Earth and that that's where the Garden of Eden's really at, and that only the elite get to go down there and all of that. Well, if you find the entrance, let me know. Like if you really find it, let me know. Not if you see a reel that is just actually AI. I don't want to hear about that. But if you really find it, hit me up. Eden is not, however, on the Earth's surface, but above it. Oh, womp womp. Or more correctly, in the higher etheric element which encloses the Earth in a globe of translucent energy. The four rivers are the four streams of ether or energy which sustain the four kingdoms of the physical world: mineral, vegetable, animal, and human. Man physically is nourished by the vital ethers of nature. These ethers now work through him, but in pre Adamic times he possessed no physical body, and these ethers formed an etheric body. Dang, this book is getting even better than I thought it was going to be. In the midst of Eden was a small area which was termed paradise. The ancients believed this to represent approximately the north polar area of the etheric globe, which, like the physical globe, possessed polarity. There you go. See, all my Brother Panic fans, right? Go to the cusp, right? Which was where? The north polar area. The study of cell life shows that impregnated cells develop first from their north polar caps, and the same is true of planets and all of the cosmic planes. The first connection between the etheric plane and the physical was polar. Therefore, physical life moving downward from the etheric state flowed particularly to the poles, which were the first parts of the physical Earth's surface to crystallize. Nice. It is therefore stated that in ancient times, millions of years ago, the gods brought the seeds or germs of life, come on, first to the Earth's polar cap. The descent of the gods is described in Genesis 6, verse 2, where the sons of God saw the daughters of men and took unto themselves wives. And well, let's see what he has to say about it real quick. By this, we are to understand that the cooling of the earth's surface resulted in the liberation of elements. These elements, moved by the will of the gods, gradually assumed forms and patterns, even as the impregnated cell gradually builds an organism capable of sustaining individual intelligent existence. Okay, I was gonna add in there too that that whole thing about the Watchers and falling and mating with the women of the earth. Well, couldn't that just be looked at another aspect of that divine union? In the very ancient times, the first bodies were such as air and water, for these responded most easily to the pulses of the creating will. When the vehicles or bodies built up first from the more subtle parts of the physical globe reached a certain degree of development, the spirits dwelling in the ether above, and called in the Bible the sons of God, flowed downward and into the new bodies which are called the daughters of men, or more correctly, the daughters of Manas, or mind. The mind formed bodies. For the word man literally means mind. Manly P. Hall. While dwelling in the paradisical state, the entities which are now known as men were androgynous, as is explicitly stated. They were created male and female. In the old Kabbalah, they are described as having been formed back to back, a male and female organism. More correctly, it is to be inferred that they possessed inwardly the personal or the potentialities of both positive and negative powers. The Edenic garden contained not only the rudiments of human existence, but also the other kingdoms which were to manifest. It was therefore a sort of superior earth in which forms of life developed and prepared themselves for physical incarnation, even as the wise in this world are building superphysical bodies in which to function when the race has finished its physical evolution. The name given to the order of life which was to incarnate as humans was Adam, which means species, type, or kind. Never for a moment does it infer a single individual. Adam, therefore, correctly means a mode of consciousness, a type with mind, as distinguished from the animal and vegetable kingdoms which do not possess individualized intelligence, and therefore are properly termed species. These lower kingdoms have a center of consciousness called a monad, whereas man has evolved his monad into an ego or a center of I amness. Uh-huh. The process of man's entry into physical existence, or the birth of the terrestrial atom, was preceded by an elaborate evolutionary program. Forms were built up in the material world by a process of natural experimentation. These forms were not habitable by creatures possessing mind, and they passed away in the laboratory of evolution. It was only after hundreds of millions of years of growth and development that forms were generated suitable to the manifestation of the celestial atom. The forms which were not used, called the mindless, the shadows, and the monsters, are described by Berosus in his Chaldean history as composite beings made up of animals, birds, and fishes with many heads. They are also referred to in the Kabbalah as the kings of Edom, the unbalanced giants who perished in the void. In chapter 6, fourth verse of Genesis, it says, there were giants in the earth in those days. Oh boy, the other one of the other conspiracy topics everybody loves. The giants. Giants are real. The government's hiding giants in the hollow earth. Oh, buddy. Maybe so. Doubtful, but maybe so. At last, by the workings of nature from below upwardly, forms were organized through which the human life wave could come into manifestation. When this process had been consummated, man's consciousness descended into a specially prepared part of what appeared to be the animal kingdom, whereupon this kingdom branched off definitely from the true animal kingdom, resulting in the scientific perplexity concerning the missing link and the origin of human individuality. Such are a few of the reasonable conclusions sustained by the ancient commentaries and cosmological systems to be derived from the early chapters of Genesis. All right, then. So that is section 1 of Manly P. Hall's How to Understand Your Bible. Well, that syncs up pretty good with our beloved Travis's Cosmic Doctrine reading right now, huh? Interesting. Interesting. Huh. Well, like I said, still keep take this with a grain of salt, a slight one at least, but don't just completely overlook what's being said here either. I'm looking forward to more of this one. So far, I'm really enjoying it. Hopefully, you can say the same. And for those of you who have tapped in for Class B of this week, well, I appreciate it. Anybody, whatever, people are, please let me know. I appreciate the feedback of any of you all, whether for good, whether for bad, whatever. Just let me know if you think it's going to be good to do a little division of classwork or if it's going to be too much. But all right then. So I didn't say at the beginning this is Jay Balvea. This is Manly. Well, I did say this is Manly P. Hall's How to Understand Your Bible. And if you're new and enjoy this, be sure to hit a like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you all. Thank you for your fellow interest in the mysteries and much love. I'll see you tomorrow and